19 wolves had already been dragged from the freezing lake when Luella saw the last one trapped beneath the broken ice. He was larger than the others, black as midnight, with amber gold eyes that held an authority no ordinary wolf should possess. Even half drowned, the Alpha King looked at her with impossible recognition. Luella reached toward him as angry voices drew closer through the trees. Why had someone tried to kill his entire pack? And what would happen if she saved their king? Chapter 1. The Outcast of Black Pine. The bread was stale again. Luella Martin held the rock-hard loaf between her calloused hands and studied it beneath the weak light coming through the only window in her cabin. It was 3 days old. The baker in Black Pine Village would sell her nothing except the leftovers. The loaves even the pigs were unlikely to want. She would have to soften it in melted snow before she could eat it. At least he sells anything to you. Her stepmother, Gail Fisher, had said those words only the week before, blonde curls bouncing as she laughed. Most shops won't serve a Martin anymore. Not after what your father did. Luella's father had died 6 years earlier after being accused of poaching on Lord Philip Underwood's land. They had found him frozen in the forest with the carcass of a deer beside him. His disgrace had attached itself to Luella from that day forward. Within a year, Gail had remarried Francisco Cantrell, a wealthy merchant who owned nearly half the village. Gail kept everything after the marriage, the house, the savings, even the jewelry that had belonged to Luella's mother. Luella received only this cabin. Calling it a cabin was generous. It was one room with a leaking roof, a crooked door, and a fireplace that barely defeated the winter cold. The shack stood at the forest's edge, roughly 20 minutes from the center of Black Pine. That distance suited the villagers. It allowed them to forget Luella existed. Plain little Luella. When she was younger, the village children had followed her while chanting about her crooked nose and crooked soul, saying both suited the daughter of a thief. Her nose had been broken when she was 12. Her stepsister, Sheila Stanton, Gail's daughter from her first marriage, had slammed a door into Luella's face during an argument over a hairbrush. Sheila had claimed it was an accident. The bone had healed badly, leaving a visible bump across the bridge. Combined with Luella's dull brown hair, thin body, gray eyes, and the permanent shadows beneath them, it ensured no one would ever compare her favorably to Sheila, whose porcelain skin, blonde curls, and rosebud lips made her the beauty of the family. Luella placed the loaf on her little table and pulled her worn shawl closer around her shoulders. The morning was viciously cold even inside the cabin. Every breath became a pale cloud in front of her face. Beyond the window, ice burdened the trees so heavily that their branches groaned. She needed to check her traps. Entering the forest during weather like this was dangerous, but hunger left her no real choice. The 3 rabbits she had caught the previous week were gone. If she found nothing today, stale bread would be all she had until the weather changed. Luella pulled on her father's old hunting boots. They were far too large, so she stuffed cloth into the toes until they fit well enough to walk. Then she took the pine walking stick she had carved herself. Her coat came last. It had been repaired so many times that the original cloth was difficult to identify beneath patches of mismatched brown fabric. Luella opened the door. The cold struck her like a blow. She stepped into the snow and began the walk toward her traps, each movement producing a hard crunch beneath her boots. The forest was silent. No birds, no squirrels, not even the usual whisper of wind through branches. Luella slowed. Something was wrong. She had lived beside these woods her entire life. She understood their rhythms almost as well as she understood her own breathing. The forest was never completely silent unless something had disturbed it. Her first trap was empty. So was the second. At the third, Luella found tracks. Wolf tracks. She crouched beside them. Large prints. Fresh. An entire pack had passed through perhaps an hour earlier, traveling east toward Black Pine Lake. Unease tightened her stomach. Wolves usually avoided the village. They remained deep inside the forest, where prey was plentiful and human beings were rare. For a whole pack to enter territory this close to Black Pine meant something had forced them there. Or someone had. Luella followed. She told herself she only wanted to make certain the animals were not circling toward her cabin. That was partly true. The rest was curiosity. After 6 years of isolation, after years of being ignored by almost everyone in Black Pine, after living a life so small it barely seemed to leave marks behind, curiosity was one of the few things Luella still possessed. The tracks took her through thick pine growth, across a frozen stream, and up a rocky slope. By the time she reached the top, the cold air had burned her lungs. Then she saw the lake. Black Pine Lake stretched below like a vast sheet of dark glass. At its center, the ice had been broken. Luella stared. Those were not natural fractures caused by currents or changing temperatures. Someone had smashed holes deliberately. Jagged openings scarred the frozen surface, exposing black water beneath. And inside those holes were wolves. Luella's hand covered her mouth. There had to be 20 of them, perhaps more. Some gray bodies floated without movement. Others continued to struggle, claws scraping uselessly against ice as they tried to climb from the water. Their desperate howls traveled across the lake. Luella's chest tightened. This was no accident. Someone had trapped them here. No, no, no. She hurried down the slope. She already knew who was responsible. Everyone in Black Pine knew Lord Philip Underwood hated wolves. 3 years earlier, a pack had killed one of his prized hunting dogs. Underwood had sworn revenge. But this was more than revenge. This was deliberate cruelty. Luella reached the shoreline and pressed her walking stick against the ice. It supported her. Barely. Thin fractures spread outward from the pressure. The closest wolf was around 10 feet away. It struggled weakly in the freezing water. Its yellow eyes met hers. For one breath, girl and wolf remained completely still. "I'm going to help you," Luella said. She had no idea whether it understood. "Just hold on." She lowered herself onto her stomach and crawled onto the lake, spreading her weight as widely as possible. Her father had taught her how to move across dangerous ice. "Make yourself flat," he had told her. "Spread your weight. Give the ice as little reason as possible to break beneath you." Cold passed through her coat and dress almost immediately. Luella kept crawling. The wolf's movements were becoming slower. It was exhausted. The cold was beginning to win. "Come on," she whispered when she reached the opening. "Give me your paw, please." The wolf narrowed its eyes and growled. The sound traveled through the ice beneath Luella. "I know," she whispered. "You don't trust me. I wouldn't trust me either. But right now, I'm all you have." She extended one hand, palm upward, then waited. The wolf stared at her for what felt like forever. Finally, one enormous paw rose from the water. Luella seized it. Wet fur, cold flesh, far more weight than she had expected. She braced her boots against a raised ridge of ice and pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled harder. Her shoulders screamed. The wolf shifted enough for its second paw to catch the ice. Together, they fought until its body slid free of the water. The animal collapsed beside her, panting and shaking violently. "One," Luella breathed. She looked across the lake. 19 more. The second wolf was smaller and had swallowed less water. She dragged it out more quickly. The third fought her even while she tried to save it, snapping close enough to her fingers that she nearly lost one. The fourth was already dead. Luella kept going. By the 6th wolf, her clothes were soaked. Her hands had gone numb. She could no longer feel her feet. Still she moved. 7. The villagers would have called her insane if they could see her. Risking her life for animals. Gail would have laughed. Exactly the foolishness expected from a marten. 10, 11, 12. Luella's vision began to blur. The cold no longer hurt. That frightened her more than the pain had. Her body was slipping beyond suffering into something quiet and almost inviting. It wanted her to stop. To lie down on the ice. To rest for only a moment. 13, 14, Her words slurred. Keep moving. 15. 16. 17. 3 remained. The ice groaned beneath her. Luella had crossed the same sections too many times. The surface was weakening with every journey. She crawled toward the 18th wolf. It was barely conscious, its eyes almost closed. She gripped the fur along its neck and pulled. A crack exploded beneath her. Not the faint sound she had heard before. This was deep and violent, echoing across the lake like thunder. Luella froze. A fracture raced beneath the ice toward shore. No, she whispered. Not yet. Please, not yet. She dragged the 18th wolf toward solid ice, then turned for the 19th. The fracture widened. Luella stretched forward and seized the wolf's paw. The lake broke beneath her. She fell. Freezing water swallowed her entire body. The shock was so violent her heart seemed to stop. She could not scream, could not breathe. Water entered her mouth and nose. For one terrible second, Luella thought of her father. She was going to die the same way, frozen, alone. In the forest that had raised her. Then something caught her coat. Powerful jaws closed around the cloth near her shoulder. Luella was jerked upward. Her body scraped painfully against the jagged edge of ice. Another pull. Then she was lying on the frozen surface, coughing water from her lungs. Luella lifted her head. The wolves she had rescued stood around her. All 18. They had pulled her from the lake. They had saved her. Thank you, she gasped through chattering teeth. Thank you. But the 19th wolf remained trapped, and farther away, inside the most distant opening, waited the 20th. Luella tried to stand. Her knees collapsed beneath her. The first wolf she had rescued approached. It was enormous, covered in silver-gray fur, with unusually intelligent eyes. It lowered its head and nudged Luella's hand. Then it looked toward the lake. I can't, Luella whispered. I'm sorry, I can't. The wolf nudged her again, harder. It did not feel like a request. Luella wrapped both hands in its thick fur and used the animal's strength to pull herself upright. The world swayed around her. One step, then another. The 19th wolf was easier. The others had surrounded the opening and kept it from slipping beneath the surface. Luella needed only to help guide it toward shore. Then she looked toward the final hole. The 20th wolf was different, larger than every other member of the pack. Its fur was pure black, a color uncommon among the wolves in this region. Its eyes were not yellow. They were amber, almost gold. Even half drowned, the animal radiated authority. The Alpha King. Luella crawled across the ice one final time. There was almost no strength left in her. Her body moved because she ordered it to move, nothing more. She reached the opening, extended her hand. The black wolf looked directly into her eyes. Not past her, not through her, at her. Something in that gaze made Luella forget the cold for a heartbeat. There was recognition there, not simple animal awareness, understanding. The wolf seemed to know what Luella had done, and what saving this pack had already cost her. Slowly, the Alpha King lifted one massive paw and placed it in Luella's hand. She pulled. The wolf fought upward. Together they struggled against the freezing water, the shattered ice, and exhaustion. At last, the black wolf came free. It collapsed on shore beside Luella, its sides rising and falling violently. The others gathered around them, forming a wall of living bodies against the bitter wind. Luella shut her eyes. 20 wolves. All saved. Then she heard voices. Men, angry, approaching through the forest. I saw tracks leading this way. If those beasts escaped, Martin Girl's cabin is nearby. You don't think? Luella opened her eyes. Lord Philip Underwood was coming. For the wolves. And for her. The Alpha King raised its head. Its lips peeled away from its teeth. Every wolf stood at once. The pack formed a wall between Luella and the approaching men. For the first time in 6 years, Luella understood something her father would have been proud to see. She was no longer alone. Chapter 2. When Mercy Becomes Treason. Lord Philip Underwood emerged from the tree line like winter given human form. He was tall and imposing, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak worth more than Luella's entire cabin. 6 armed men followed him. Every one carried a rifle. Their expressions belonged to men who resented being pulled from warm houses into murderous cold. Luella recognized them. Ted Boyd, the blacksmith. Guy Bolton, owner of the general store. Daniel Carroll, Underwood's chief gamekeeper. Men who had known Luella's father. Men who had watched her grow up. Men who had done nothing when Gale cast her aside. And men who would shoot her now if Underwood ordered them to. Well, well, Underwood called across the frozen lake. Little Luella Martin, I should have known. Luella tried to rise, but exhaustion made her legs tremble. The wolves crowded closer, their body heat the only reason she was still conscious. Like father, like daughter, Underwood continued as he stepped onto the ice with the confidence of a man accustomed to owning everything around him. He stole my deer, now you steal my wolves. They aren't yours, Luella said. They don't belong to anyone. Underwood laughed without humor. Everything in these woods belongs to me, girl. The trees, the animals, the snow you're kneeling on. Even that miserable cabin of yours sits on my land. You exist because I allow it. He indicated the wolves. These beasts killed my finest hunting dog, tore him apart while he was performing his duty. I spent good money having them tracked, trapped, and drowned, and you have undone hours of work. They were suffering, Luella said. Fear clawed at her chest, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. They were drowning. I couldn't simply... Yes, that was the intention. Underwood removed his gloves slowly. Wolves are vermin, Miss Martin. Dangerous, useless vermin. The world is improved by having fewer of them. The Alpha King growled. The sound was so low and threatening that 2 of Underwood's men stepped backward without realizing they had moved. Underwood did not look at them. Shoot the animals, he ordered calmly. Every one of them. Let the girl watch what her mercy has earned. 6 rifles rose. No! Luella threw herself in front of the nearest wolf. Please. They haven't done anything. Move aside, Miss Martin. The politeness vanished from Underwood's voice. Unless you would prefer to share their fate. Luella's mind raced. 6 rifles. 6 armed men. Underwood. 20 exhausted wolves that had nearly drowned. And Luella could barely remain upright. If those guns fired, the lake would become a slaughterhouse. Then she remembered something. The law. Something her father had once taught her. Something she had heard repeatedly during the trial that destroyed their family. You can't, Luella said. Underwood lifted one eyebrow. You cannot kill animals on public land without proper authorization. Public land? Black Pine Lake belongs to the Crown, not your estate. Luella pointed toward a row of stones almost hidden beneath the snow. The boundary is 50 yards behind you. Your gamekeeper knows it. Ask him. Every face turned toward Daniel Carroll. The gamekeeper shifted awkwardly. His rifle lowered. She is correct, my lord. The lake is Crown property. It has been since the old king's reign. Underwood's jaw tightened. A technicality. A law, Luella corrected. She was gaining strength now, not in her body but in her voice. You need authorization from the magistrate before conducting a cull on Crown land. Written authorization, witnesses, documentation. She knew because she had sat through her father's proceedings listening to lawyers argue about hunting regulations, boundaries, and property, while her family's life collapsed around her. And by the time you ride into town, obtain permission, and return, Luella continued, these wolves will be back in the deep forest, somewhere even you won't be able to follow. For several seconds, Underwood said nothing. Only the wind and the wolves' breathing disturbed the silence. Then he smiled. It was a terrible smile. Clever girl, he said quietly. Your father was clever too. He paused. It didn't save him. The threat settled between them. Luella did not look away. I'll obtain my authorization, Underwood said. And when I do, I'll return for the wolves. His eyes fixed on Luella, and for anyone hiding them. He turned and walked back toward the forest. His men followed. Several glanced behind them at Luella and the wolves before disappearing among the trees. The moment they were gone, Luella collapsed into the snow. Her entire body shook so violently she feared her bones might break. The wolves moved around her immediately. They lay in a tight circle, enclosing her at the center. Their combined warmth was astonishing. The Alpha King settled directly behind her and pressed its massive body against her back. Thank you, Luella whispered. She was not certain whether she meant the warmth or the fact that none of them had fled when they could have. The Alpha King watched her with those unsettling amber eyes. Then the wolf lowered its head. Its nose touched Luella's forehead. She stopped breathing. The contact was gentle, deliberate. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. No one had touched her tenderly in 6 years. Every human hand that reached for her seemed to bring contempt, dismissal, or violence. But this wolf offered gratitude. You're welcome, Luella whispered. Somehow, she understood what the gesture meant. Recognition, a debt acknowledged between them. But gratitude would not protect the pack when Underwood returned with legal permission and rifles. Luella forced herself to think. She had to return to her cabin. If she remained here much longer in wet clothes, hypothermia would finish what the lake had started. The wolves needed somewhere safe as well. Somewhere beyond Underwood's estate. But where? They could not hide forever. Underwood controlled half the county. He had money, political influence, servants, hunters, and access to the law. Once he obtained his paperwork, he would hunt the wolves until none remained. And Luella had humiliated him in front of his men. He would not forgive that. Then an idea came to her. Desperate, possibly foolish, but better than waiting to die. Can you understand me? Luella asked the Alpha King. The wolf's ears lifted. I'm taking that as a yes. Luella pushed herself into a sitting position. Every muscle protested. I can't protect you. I'm nobody. Just the daughter of a dead poacher living in a shack beside the forest. The wolves watched her. But I know someone who might be able to help. Someone with more authority than Underwood. At least officially. She swallowed. Prince Morgan. The name meant something even in distant Black Pine. The king's youngest son. People say he's strange, that he prefers animals to humans. He rescues injured hawks. He nurses sick horses. 2 years ago, he pushed through a law protecting lynx from hunters. Luella met the Alpha King's gaze. If I could reach him and tell him what Underwood did, he might intervene. He might place your pack under royal protection. It was a ridiculous hope. Prince Morgan lived in the capital, 3 days away by horse. Luella owned no horse. She had almost no money, and there was no reason to believe a prince would grant an audience to the disgraced daughter of a supposed poacher. But the alternative was allowing Underwood to kill the wolves. The Alpha King stood. Snow scattered from its black coat as it shook itself. It looked toward the forest, then back at Luella. The wolf walked to where her pine stick had fallen, picked it up carefully between its jaws, and carried it to her. The other wolves rose. They arranged themselves into 2 lines, almost like an honor guard. They were waiting. For me? Luella breathed. You're serious. If a wolf's expression could speak, the Alpha King's seemed clear. You saved us. Now we follow you. Luella accepted the stick with numb fingers and pulled herself upright. Her wet clothes were already freezing stiff around her body. She probably had less than an hour before her condition became life-threatening. My cabin first, she decided. I need dry clothes. Then we decide how 20 wolves and 1 unwanted girl reach the capital without getting shot. The walk normally took 20 minutes. In Luella's condition, It took nearly an hour. The wolves surrounded her all the way. Some broke the wind. Others ranged ahead and beside her, keeping anything dangerous away. When Luella finally saw her cabin, relief almost made her cry. Then she noticed the smoke. Not from her chimney. She had allowed the fire to die that morning to conserve wood. This smoke rose beyond the cabin, black, heavy, thick enough to be seen from a great distance. Then came bells. Alarm bells. The bells Black Pine rang only for fire, attack, or disaster. No. Luella began to run. Her steps were clumsy and weak. The wolves raced ahead. She reached the cabin with burning lungs and black spots swimming across her vision. Inside, she stripped away the frozen clothes. She pulled on everything dry she possessed. 2 dresses layered together, her thickest stockings, and her father's old wool sweater. Then she took the emergency pack she kept near the door. Flint, steel, dried meat, knife, rope. Luella hurried outside again. The wolves paced restlessly. Smoke darkened the horizon. Distant chaos drifted through the trees. She had to discover what was happening in Black Pine, but arriving there with 20 wolves would create panic. People would shoot. Someone would die. Stay here, Luella told the Alpha King. The absurdity of commanding a wild wolf was not lost on her. Stay hidden. I'll come back, the Alpha King growled. Not threateningly, disapprovingly. I have to go, Luella insisted. If people see all of you, they'll... A scream cut through the forest. Human, female, terrified, close. Luella turned. A woman stumbled between the trees. Her expensive dress was torn and covered in mud. Ash streaked her face. Tears had ruined whatever careful appearance she once possessed. Sheila Stanton, Luella's stepsister. 3 men emerged behind her. Raiders. Rough men wearing mismatched armor, carrying torches and blades. They were chasing Sheila like hunters pursuing wounded prey. Luella's hand moved to the knife at her waist. Around her, 20 wolves raised their hackles. Everything was about to change. Chapter 3. The Cost of Standing Up. Sheila did not notice Luella immediately. Her terrified eyes remained fixed on the men pursuing her as she crashed blindly through snow-heavy branches. The silk dress Gale had ordered from the capital only a month earlier hung in torn strips around Sheila's legs. One raider laughed. Come on, pretty bird. We only want to talk. Talk, another added, smiling, and perhaps a little more. They were playing with her. Luella recognized it instantly. Any one of them could have caught Sheila already. Instead, they were allowing her to run. Letting exhaustion and fear do their work. Luella tightened her grip around her small knife. It was designed for rabbits and rope. Against 3 armed men, it was almost worthless. But she was not completely alone. Here, Luella shouted. She stepped directly into Sheila's path. Sheila jerked her head upward. Recognition crossed her face. For an instant, Luella could not tell whether what followed was relief or disgust. With Sheila, that had always been difficult. Sheila gasped. They, the village, everyone. I know. Get behind me. Are you insane? Sheila looked from Luella to the advancing men. You can't fight them. You don't even have... Behind me, now. Something in Luella's voice ended the argument. Sheila moved behind her, breathing hard. The 3 raiders entered the clearing. They spread into a half circle. These were not desperate thieves. They moved like men accustomed to violence. The leader had a recent burn scar along his left cheek. Firelight from his torch flickered across his expression. Well, he said. 2 birds instead of 1. You're trespassing on private property, Luella replied. She was surprised her voice remained steady. Leave, and I won't report you to Lord Underwood. All 3 men laughed. Lord Underwood. The scarred man grinned. That bastard hired us, sweetheart. Luella went still. He said this village was becoming too comfortable. People weren't paying what they owed on time. The raider lifted his torch. He told us we could take anything we could carry, so long as we burned the tax collector's office and every record inside. Cold entered Luella's blood for reasons that had nothing to do with winter. You're lying. Am I? He gestured toward the smoke behind him. Why do you think Underwood's manor hasn't been touched? Why do you think none of his men are defending the village? Sheila made a broken sound behind Luella. Francisco Cantrell, Gail's new husband, was the tax collector. My stepfather, Sheila whispered. Is he? Her voice failed. Dead? The raider smiled. Probably. Then he looked at Sheila. Don't worry, pretty thing. You won't be lonely for long. The men advanced. Luella lifted her knife. Don't. Or what? The scarred raider laughed. You'll gut 3 armed men with that little pig knife? He took another step. Here's my offer. Give us the blonde, and we let you run. A shape moved in the shadows. The Alpha King stepped into view. Then a second wolf. Then a third. One after another, the pack appeared between the trees. 20 wolves surrounded the clearing like ghosts taking physical form. The Alpha King moved directly in front of Luella. Its lips drew back. The raider's smiles vanished. What the? The leader retreated 1 step. His torch trembled. Where did they come from? The Alpha King snarled. Even Luella's instincts screamed at her to run from that sound. Back away, she said quietly. Put down your weapons. Leave the way you came. You. The scarred man stared at her. You control them. His eyes widened. You're a witch. Luella did not correct him. Right now, his fear was more useful than the truth. No one moved. Then the younger raider dropped his sword. I'm not dying for a handful of coins. He backed toward the trees. Coward, the leader spat, but the leader's own hand shook around the torch. The third raider was already disappearing. This isn't finished, the scarred man warned while retreating. Underwood will hear about this, about you and your demon wolves. Tell him, Luella replied. She held his stare. Tell him Luella Martin sends her regards. The raider ran. Only when he vanished did Luella's legs give way. She caught herself with her walking stick. Sheila began sobbing behind her. He's dead. My stepfather is dead. They burned everything. We don't know that yet, Luella said. The smoke suggested otherwise. We need to reach the village and find survivors. Sheila pointed at the wolves. With them? She looked at Luella as though seeing her for the first time. Lu, what have you done? What are these things? They're wolves. I can see that. I saved them. Luella looked at Sheila. They saved me. Then she glanced toward the path the raiders had taken. And they just saved you. Sheila opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For once, she had no response. Can you walk? Luella asked. Yes. I think. Then move. The road into Blackpine felt like entering a nightmare. Smoke poisoned every breath. Bodies lay in the snow, villagers who had tried to flee and been cut down from behind. Luella recognized Ted Boyd's youngest son. He had been 14. Shelia vomited twice. Luella kept moving. The wolves flanked them in silence. Several disappeared into smoke and ruined streets, then returned carrying or guiding survivors toward Luella. The gentleness was startling. By the time they reached the village square, 17 people had gathered around them. Men, women, children, everyone covered in soot, blood, or both. Half of Blackpine still burned. Francisco Cantrell's tax office had become little more than a black skeleton of timber. Mama! Shelia broke from the group. Mama! She ran toward the ruined building. Luella grabbed her. Let go! Shelia fought violently. She could be inside. Look! Luella pointed across the square. A group of survivors huddled near the well. At their center sat Gail Fisher, wrapped in someone else's cloak. Alive. Shelia tore free. Mother and daughter collided in an embrace, both crying and speaking at once. Luella watched from several yards away. She felt no relief, no joy, only that familiar emptiness of standing outside something and knowing she had never belonged inside it. A woman from the bakery approached. Her gaze moved from Luella to the wolves. "You brought them." It was not really a question. "I did. They're wild, dangerous, they'll turn on us. They already saved several of you." Luella pointed toward the pack. "They could have escaped when the raiders came. They didn't. They helped." "Wolves are wolves." The woman's mouth tightened. "You can't trust them. Apparently we can't trust Lord Underwood either." Luella's voice remained level. "The raiders admitted he hired them. He ordered this." Murmurs spread through the survivors. Some looked doubtful, others furious. Several turned toward Underwood's manor on the hill. It stood untouched. "That is a serious accusation." Luella turned. Daniel Carroll, Underwood's gamekeeper, approached. His rifle was gone. Ash covered his face. "It's the truth," Luella said. "The raiders told us. Underwood wanted the tax records destroyed." "And your proof?" Daniel's eyes hardened. "The word of criminals? Criminals who had no reason to lie while threatening to kill us." Luella met his gaze. "Where were you during the attack, Mr. Carroll?" Daniel said nothing. "Where were any of Underwood's men?" His silence answered more effectively than words. "They knew," someone whispered. "They had to know." Another voice rose. "He burned us out to hide what he stole." "Calm yourselves," Daniel said, raising his hands. "We do not know. 17 dead." Luella's voice cut through the crowd. Everyone stopped. 17 people are dead because your lord wanted to hide what he was doing. How many more would have died if those raiders had not been stopped? You stopped them with monsters, the baker's wife said. Demons. With wolves that chose to help when they could have run. Luella's patience was disappearing. "Which is more than I can say for Lord Underwood." A child spoke. "The wolves found my brother. I couldn't see him in the smoke. They took me to him." Another survivor raised his voice. "One pulled me away from a burning house. They protected us." Luella saw the change move through the crowd. Fear became uncertainty. Uncertainty became reluctant gratitude. Then Gail noticed her. "You." She marched toward Luella, rage twisting her face. "You brought those beasts here. You put my daughter in danger. Those beasts saved your daughter from raiders your new husband likely helped hire." Gail slapped her. The sound silenced the square. Luella tasted blood. Gail's ring had split her lip. She did not touch the wound. She only stared at the woman who had spent 6 years treating her like filth. "Feel better?" Luella asked softly. The Alpha King growled. Several villagers backed away. The entire pack shifted forward around Luella. "Call them off." Fear finally entered Gail's voice. "Luella, call them off. They aren't mine to command." Luella looked at the wolves. "They choose what they do." Then she looked back at Gail. "Just like I do." Luella turned toward the crowd. "Underwood will return. Next time he'll bring real soldiers. He'll blame this attack on someone else. Probably me." No one interrupted. "He'll say the wolves are dangerous. He'll call me a witch. And he'll claim killing all of us is necessary to protect everyone." Silence. "I'm leaving." Faces turned toward her. "I'm going to the capital. I'm going to ask Prince Morgan to hear what happened here." She paused. "The wolves are coming with me." The Alpha King stood beside her. "Anyone who wants to come is welcome. Anyone who prefers to remain here and trust Lord Underwood's mercy can do that instead." No one moved at first. Then Shelia stepped away from Gail. "I'll go." Gail grabbed her. "Absolutely not. I forbid you." "You forbid me?" Shelia laughed without humor. "Mama, Francisco is probably dead. Our home is burned. We have less than nothing. Rebuilding will leave us in debt for years. We'll manage. We always. By selling me to the highest bidder?" Gail froze. That was your plan, wasn't it? Marry me to some rich merchant and use the marriage to recover what we lost. Shelia pulled free. I'm finished being your prize. She crossed the square and stood beside Luella. I'm going to the capital, with or without your blessing. Another voice spoke. I'll come. Me too. My family has nothing left here. Within minutes, 12 people volunteered. More than Luella had expected. We leave at dawn, she said. Take only what you can carry. Bring weapons if you have them. Bring enough food for 3 days. She turned to the Alpha King. We'll have to travel fast. Can you do that? The great wolf lowered its head once. Deliberate. Understanding. This was no longer simply about saving animals from a frozen lake. It was about people killed because a powerful man believed no one could challenge him. It was about justice. About answering cruelty with resistance. Luella Martin, the plain girl with the crooked nose, the disgraced daughter of a dead poacher, had just declared war on Lord Philip Underwood. Chapter 4. The Road to Retribution. Dawn arrived gray and bitter. Luella stood outside her cabin, with a pack over one shoulder and her father's knife at her waist. She looked at the shack that had been her home for 6 years. The walls barely stopped the wind. Rain entered through 3 places in the roof. The door hung crookedly. 6 years of stale bread, cold nights, isolation, survival built from stubbornness. Luella waited for sadness. It did not come. She felt only relief. 12 volunteers waited in the clearing behind the cabin. Shelia wore her ruined silk dress beneath a borrowed cloak. Tom Ward, the butcher's assistant, carried a meat cleaver. Annette Matthews stood with her 2 young sons. Brooke Knox, a widow whose arms had become powerful after years of washing other people's clothes, carried supplies. 6 others completed the group, some of them people Luella barely knew. 20 wolves waited at the forest's edge. This is madness, Chong Cherry muttered. He was a farmhand who had lost everything in the attack. We're placing our lives in the hands of wild animals and a girl who talks to them. That girl saved my children, Annette replied sharply. She pulled her sons closer. The wolves guided us through the smoke. I trust them more than Underwood. Underwood will send people after us, Tom said, checking the grip on his cleaver. Everyone understands that, yes? We're fugitives now. Then we move quickly. Luella adjusted her pack. The capital is 3 days northeast if we take the main road. She shook her head. We can't take it. Underwood will watch every road. So where do we go? Someone asked. Through the thornwood. Several people gasped. One woman made a protective sign. Chong paled. That forest is cursed. People enter and never return. People enter unprepared and get lost, Luella corrected. My father trapped there. He taught me the routes. She looked at the Alpha King. And we have guides who understand forests better than any human. The black wolf's amber eyes gleamed. We travel in daylight and camp before dark. The wolves scout ahead and behind us. If everything goes well, we reach the capital in 4 days instead of 3. And if everything doesn't go well? Shelia asked. Luella met her gaze. Then we fight. They left within the hour. A narrow game trail carried them northeast into deeper forest. The wolves spread around the refugees, some ranging ahead, others behind, the rest moving along both sides. The Alpha King stayed with Luella. For the first several hours, everyone remained tense. A breaking branch made people reach for knives. Movement in the trees caused frightened glances. Gradually, the forest swallowed them. No one appeared behind them. People began breathing more easily. Annette's younger son approached Luella. He was perhaps 7. Miss? Yes? Can I touch one? I'm not sure that's... The Alpha King turned toward him. The boy froze. Slowly, the black wolf lowered its enormous head and nudged the child's hand. Wonder replaced fear. The boy buried his fingers in thick black fur. He's soft, he whispered. He looked at Annette. Mama, he's so soft. The other children edged closer. Soon 3 wolves had children gathered around them. Parents warned them to be careful, though even the adults began to smile. They really are protecting us, Brooke murmured. A gray wolf gently redirected a wandering child toward the group. I've never seen anything like this. Neither have I, Luella said. I'm simply grateful. They stopped around midday. Lunch consisted of dried meat and hard bread eaten while standing. They lit no fire. A young wolf with white markings returned from the south. It approached the Alpha King and communicated through a mixture of posture and low sounds. The Alpha King's ears flattened. Luella understood before asking, "What is it?" The black wolf looked south. Then at her. "They're coming." The others turned. "How far?" Luella asked again. The wolf struck the ground 3 times. 3 hours, she guessed, perhaps less. Luella faced the refugees. "We move now. Underwood's men are behind us." The brief peace vanished. Parents gathered children. Tom gripped his cleaver. Sheila turned pale. "How many?" Chong asked. "I don't know." Luella looked toward the trail. "But we cannot outrun mounted soldiers." "So what do we do?" Tom demanded. "We slow them." "With what?" "We have a butcher's cleaver, a few knives, and wolves. They'll have guns and armor." Luella studied the trees. They had entered the beginning of the thornwood. Branches twisted tightly overhead. Dense thorn bushes filled the spaces between ancient trunks. "The forest," Luella said. Tom stared. "What?" "We use the forest." An hour later, Underwood's hunting party reached the trail and stopped. Several trees blocked the path. They had not fallen naturally. Someone had cut them down and positioned them deliberately. Behind the trunks, thorny vines and bushes had been woven together into a wall. "What in—" Lord Underwood pulled sharply on his horse's reins. 8 mounted men halted behind him. Twice as many soldiers on foot stopped farther back. Daniel Carroll dismounted. He examined the barrier. "Recently cut, my lord. Less than an hour ago, and these brambles have been moved and shaped." "Obviously." Underwood glared at him. "The Martin girl did this." "With respect, my lord, one girl couldn't move these trees. Not even with the refugees." Daniel placed one hand against a massive oak. "This trunk must weigh nearly a ton. A dozen men would need ropes and pulleys." A howl sounded nearby. The horses shifted nervously. Rifles came up. "The wolves," a soldier whispered. "She has the wolves working for her." "Wolves do not cut trees," Underwood snapped. His confidence sounded weaker than before. "They don't build barricades." A second howl answered. Then another. North, south, east, west. The sounds surrounded the hunting party. "How many?" one soldier whispered. His rifle followed shadows between the trees. "My lord," Daniel began, "perhaps we should—" "We continue." Underwood cut him off. "Clear the road. I will not be defeated by frightened animals and a delusional girl." It took 2 hours. By the time the barrier was removed, the sun was already descending. Daniel studied the trail. They could have gone anywhere. Wolf tracks are covering the human prints. Underwood's face tightened. "Split up." Daniel looked at him. "My lord? Cover more ground." "That may not be—" "It is an order, Carol." The hunting party divided into 4 groups. Each disappeared into a different part of the darkening thornwood. None noticed the wolves watching. None realized when their own routes began curving back toward places they had already passed. By full darkness, the thornwood had become a maze of identical trunks and thorn-covered paths. Every group was lost. Miles away, Luella's refugees settled into a natural hollow surrounded by old oaks. They had traveled almost twice their expected distance because the wolves had found faster routes through the forest. "We escaped," Sheila said. She stared at the little fire Tom had managed to start. "I truly didn't think we would." "Not yet." Luella sat beside the flames. Underwood will eventually find his way out. We move at first light. Brooke looked at her. How did you know what to do? The barricade, making them lose our trail. My father. Luella moved a branch in the fire. He used to say the forest gives you everything you need. Food, shelter, defense, but only if you know how to ask for it. He sounds like a good man, Annette said. He was. Luella's throat tightened. They called him a thief and a poacher. He took only what we needed to survive. Never more. And Underwood killed him for it, Tom said. His voice hardened. The same way he killed my employer. The same way he burned our village. Everyone fell quiet. The Alpha King came closer to Luella. She buried her fingers in black fur and allowed its warmth to steady her. Shelia spoke after a while. Can I ask something? About what? The wolves. Luella waited. Why are they doing this? Shelia gestured helplessly. Animals don't understand revenge or justice. They don't build barricades. They don't guide children through smoke. Why are they helping us? Luella looked at the Alpha King. Fire reflected inside its amber eyes. I think they understand more than we believe. She paused. I saved them. Now they save me. It isn't training. What is it? Recognition. Luella searched for the clearest explanation. They see me. They see us. And they've decided to remain. That's terrifying, Chong said. Luella looked at him. Why? Because if animals can choose, they can choose something else tomorrow. They won't. Chong raised an eyebrow. You know that? Tomorrow they'll still protect us because we aren't Underwood. Luella's voice became firm. We don't drown them for revenge. We don't hunt them for entertainment. We respect them. She stood. Every person here had a choice in Black Pine. You could have stayed. You could have trusted Underwood to rebuild what he destroyed. Her eyes moved from face to face. Instead, you followed me, a nobody. The daughter of a supposed poacher. No one answered. Then Annette did. Because you saved my sons. She looked toward the children. While everyone else ran or hid, you stood between those raiders and us with almost nothing. Because Underwood is a monster, Tom added. And monsters have to be stopped. Exactly. Luella nodded. The wolves made the same decision. They could have returned to the deep forest as soon as I pulled them from the lake. Her hand rested against the Alpha King. They stayed. They fought for us. They are still fighting. Luella looked around the camp. Tomorrow we push hard. If we are fortunate, we'll reach the edge of the thornwood by night. The day after that, we enter settled country again. Roads, Tom said. Inns, Brooke added. And law, Luella finished. But we remain careful. Underwood has influence beyond Black Pine. Shelia frowned. How exactly do we meet Prince Morgan? Luella was silent. We're commoners, refugees. Palace guards won't even let us through a gate. I've been considering that. Luella took a breath. We make noise. Chong stared at her. What? A lot of noise. We arrive with 20 wolves and a story about a lord who arranged the burning of his own village. Luella shrugged. Someone will tell the prince. Or they arrest us, Chong muttered. Possibly. Luella almost smiled. We've come this far. A wolf howled somewhere beyond the firelight. Not an alarm. Something almost musical. Other wolves joined. The sound flowed through the forest. They're beautiful, Annette's older son whispered. Why did everyone tell us we should be afraid? Because fear is easier than understanding, Luella said. She remembered something her father had repeated throughout her childhood. Beauty does not matter. What matters is what exists inside. The wolves were predators. Teeth. Claws. Wild strength. By ordinary human judgment, there was nothing gentle about them. Yet they possessed loyalty and honor that many human beings had forgotten. And Luella had never been considered beautiful either. Plain face. Crooked nose. Thin body. Daughter of a criminal. But she had entered freezing water to save 20 wolves. she had faced 3 raiders with a rabbit knife. She had guided refugees through a forest while Underwood's armed men wandered in circles behind them. Perhaps her father had understood more than she realized. Sleep, Luella told everyone. The wolves will watch. Tomorrow will be difficult. The refugees settled into blankets. Shelia sat beside Luella. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Shelia whispered, "I'm sorry." Luella turned. "For what?" "Everything." Shelia looked into the fire. "The door, your nose, the way I treated you, being cruel because Mother taught me that cruelty was normal." Luella studied her stepsister. Firelight caught dried tear marks on Shelia's cheeks. "Why now?" "Because I nearly died yesterday." Shelia's voice remained quiet. "And the person who saved me was the person I hurt most." She swallowed. "I think I need to become better than I was. Better than Mother raised me to be." Part of Luella wanted to keep the anger. 6 years was a long time. She could hold resentment as tightly as the wolves had fought the freezing lake. But what would that change? "Apology accepted," Luella said. "But words aren't enough." "I know. Show me you're different." Shelia nodded. "I will." The Alpha King suddenly raised its head. 3 scouting wolves entered the hollow. They communicated through quiet growls and body movements. Shelia watched. "What are they saying?" "Underwood's men are still lost," Luella interpreted. "Separated." Confused. "The forest has them." "Good." Shelia's voice became cold. "Let them remain helpless for a while." Luella looked at her. Perhaps Shelia truly was changing. Perhaps all of them were. The fire burned lower. Stars appeared through crooked branches overhead. Surrounded by refugees and wolves, sitting inside the ruins of everything her old life had been, Luella permitted herself something she had not felt in years. Hope. Perhaps they would reach the capital. Perhaps Prince Morgan would listen. Perhaps justice was more than a story powerful people told the powerless. The Alpha King rested its head across Luella's lap. She stroked its fur until sleep came. Tomorrow would bring more danger. But tonight, for the first time in 6 years, Luella was not alone. Chapter 5. The Merchant's Gambit. Their second day of travel carried them out of the thornwood. Rolling hills replaced twisted trees. Farms and small villages appeared across the countryside. The gentler land should have reassured Luella. Instead, she missed the forest. There had been places to hide there. Out here, everyone could see them. "We look like a traveling circus," Tom complained. His gaze moved across the strange procession. 20 wolves, 12 refugees, and almost no money. He looked at Luella. "What happens when our food runs out?" It was a fair question. They had rationed carefully, but supplies would last perhaps 2 more days. "There's a market town ahead," Luella said. "Millbrook. My father taught me the route. We should reach it this afternoon." "A town?" Chong looked alarmed. "We can't walk into a town surrounded by wolves. Someone will shoot them." "The wolves won't enter." Luella had already considered the problem. "They remain in the woods. A few of us buy supplies. Everyone else waits." "And if news about Black Pine has already reached them?" Shelia asked. "Then we run." Luella's expression tightened. "But we need food. We need information about what's ahead. We don't have another option." The Alpha King made a questioning sound. "I know." Luella scratched behind its ears. "You don't like it. Neither do I. But 20 wolves will frighten everyone in Millbrook. We need to look ordinary." The wolf regarded her in a way that suggested it found the idea questionable. Just after noon, they reached Millbrook. It was larger than Black Pine, perhaps 300 people. There were real streets and a busy market square. Smoke rose peacefully from chimneys. Children played near houses. Everything looked painfully normal. Luella found herself longing for the life she had once hated. A life where stale bread had been the greatest problem. "The wolves stay here," she said. She pointed toward a stand of trees with a clear view of the town. "Tom, Brooke, You're coming with me. Shelia started to object. Lou, no arguments. If we aren't back within 2 hours, everyone leaves Northeast without us. The Alpha King pressed its head against Luella's palm. She saw concern in the wolf's eyes. I'll be careful, she promised. I survived Underwood and his raiders. I refuse to be captured buying turnips. Entering Millbrook felt strange after days spent with wolves. Cartwheels rattled across stone. Merchants called to customers. Women traded gossip around water pumps. Act normal, Luella whispered. Tom glanced at their smoke-stained clothes. Yes, 3 people on foot with no horses, no wagon, and no obvious home. Perfectly normal. But Millbrook was a trading town. Travelers were common. No one challenged them. Luella approached a produce stall and calculated how much she could buy with the handful of coins taken from her cabin. Bread, beans, perhaps salted meat. Then a nearby conversation caught her attention. Terrible business about Black Pine. Luella froze. An older woman was speaking with the vegetable merchant. Burned nearly to the ground, they say. Raiders killed dozens. Lord Underwood has offered a reward, the merchant replied while arranging turnips. 5 gold pieces for information leading to those responsible. Responsible? I thought raiders did it. They did, apparently. But locals helped them. The merchant lowered his voice. A girl named Martin, daughter of that old poacher. Luella's fingers curled into fists. She showed the raiders where the tax records were, led them straight to the office. The lie was so complete she almost admired its construction. That's horrible, the woman said. Why would she do it? Revenge, probably. Her father was hanged for theft. Girl held a grudge. Luella's stomach turned. Lord Underwood says she's unstable, dangerous. Apparently she controls wolves with dark magic. Wolves? The older woman made a protective sign. Saints preserve us. Tom seized Luella's elbow. We leave. Then she saw the poster. It had been nailed to a public board across the square. A crude drawing showed a thin young woman with a crooked nose, surrounded by snarling wolves. Luella Martin. Wanted. Murder. Arson. Witchcraft. Conspiracy. 5 gold pieces alive. 10 dead. Dead pays more, Brooke whispered. Horror entered her voice. He wants you killed. Luella's mind moved quickly. If Underwood's version had reached Millbrook this soon, every settlement between here and Thornhaven might have heard it. They could no longer walk into towns openly. They could not buy food without risking recognition. Change of plan. Luella turned away. We leave now. Without supplies? Tom asked. We forage, hunt, do whatever we have to. She lowered her head. Walk slowly. Don't draw attention. Hey! Luella's heart stopped. You there, girl with the crooked nose. A town guard pushed through the crowd. He looked barely 20, young enough to think capturing a notorious criminal might make his career. His hand rested on his sword. You wouldn't happen to know a Luella Martin, would you? He smiled. Because you look very much like... Tom threw his cleaver. He was a butcher. Not a soldier. The weapon spun past the guard and buried itself in a wooden post. But it bought 1 second. Luella ran. Brooke and Tom followed. Shouting exploded across the market. Stop them. The witch. The Martin girl. 10 gold pieces. They raced into a side street. Boots thundered behind them. More guards were joining. Soon half the town seemed to be chasing them. Brooke turned sharply into an alley. They burst into a residential neighborhood filled with little gardens, clotheslines, and startled chickens. We're not going to make it, Tom panted. There are too many. A howl split the air. Not from outside town. From somewhere ahead. The Alpha King appeared around a corner at full speed. 3 wolves followed. They had ignored Luella's instructions. Oh no. Luella stared. No, no. But the wolves did not attack anyone. The Alpha King rushed past Luella and took the lead. The others remained behind the humans, snarling at anyone who came too close. The pack members guided them through narrow spaces between houses, across gardens, over fences, across a little bridge. They selected routes horses could not easily use, and avoided main streets where crowds gathered. At last, they broke through Millbrook's northern edge. The rest of the pack waited there. "So much for hiding," Shelia said when Luella staggered to a stop. Then she smiled weakly. "But I'm glad you're alive." "We have to move," Luella gasped. "They'll send riders after us. We probably have less than an hour before." "Before you get yourselves killed through complete incompetence?" A man's voice interrupted. Everyone turned. A middle-aged stranger stepped from behind a merchant wagon. His clothing suggested wealth without extravagance. His eyes were intelligent and calculating. He smiled. "Please don't panic. I'm not here to collect Underwood's reward." Tom picked up a broken branch and held it like a club. "Then who are you?" "Muhammad Olson." The man bowed slightly. "I'm a merchant. Silk, spices, occasionally information." His smile widened. "And I have an offer for you, Miss Martin." Luella's hand moved toward her knife. "How do you know who I am?" "The same way nearly everyone in the kingdom will know soon." Muhammad gestured toward Millbrook. "Lord Underwood has been remarkably efficient. According to his story, you're a murderous witch, a traitor, and the person responsible for Blackpine's destruction." "I didn't." "I know." The merchant's expression became serious. "I was in Blackpine 1 week before the attack." Luella watched him carefully. "I saw how Underwood treated people. I watched him take every coin he could while his manor became richer. When I heard Blackpine burned, I had little difficulty guessing who truly benefited." "Then help us," Shelia said. Her desperation was obvious. "We're trying to reach Prince Morgan." Muhammad laughed. Not cruelly. Almost sympathetically. "You believe Prince Morgan doesn't already know what Underwood is?" Shelia stared. "Nobles protect nobles," Muhammad continued. "Even a decent prince cannot openly accuse a powerful lord of mass murder without proof." Luella felt something inside her sink. Muhammad noticed. "There are other ways to fight." "What ways?" Luella asked. He studied the wolves. His attention remained longest on the Alpha King. "You possess something no one else does. An alliance with creatures everyone fears and no one understands." His gaze returned to Luella. "That is power." "I don't want power. I want justice. Justice requires power." Muhammad's voice remained calm. "Without power, you become another corpse Underwood leaves behind." Tom frowned. "You still haven't said what you want." "I want to help." Muhammad pointed toward his wagon. "I have money, connections, safe places between here and the capital. I can put you in front of Prince Morgan as legitimate petitioners, rather than starving refugees shouting outside palace gates." "Why?" Luella did not move. "What do you gain?" Muhammad smiled sharply. "Underwood owes me a considerable amount of money. If his corruption is proven, his assets will be seized." He shrugged. "I intend to be first in line when debts are paid." Then his expression hardened. "And I would enjoy seeing him hang. Call that business. Call it sentiment. Either way, our interests happen to align." Luella looked at the Alpha King. The wolf gave nothing away. Brooke spoke. "How do we know this isn't a trap?" "You don't," Muhammad answered immediately. "At least you're honest," Tom muttered. "Ask yourselves what you lose by accepting." Muhammad opened the rear of his wagon. "Food, blankets, clean clothing, supplies. I prepared this today." Luella stared. "You knew we would come here? I understand how refugees travel. You avoid major roads but still move northeast. Eventually you need food." His expression softened. "Let me help you." Everything in Luella warned her against easy trust. Yet everything Muhammad said made sense. The Alpha King approached him. Muhammad extended one hand. The wolf sniffed it. For several seconds neither moved. Then the Alpha King sat, not submissive, not threatening, simply accepting Muhammad's presence. Muhammad glanced at Luella. Your wolf appears to approve. He isn't my wolf. Even better. Luella made her decision. What's your plan? Muhammad's smile returned. First, we stop making you look like escaped criminals. He pointed toward the refugees. Then, you travel as part of my merchant caravan. Legal, ordinary, boring. And the wolves? Shelia asked. They travel through the woods during daylight and join us after dark. Muhammad folded his arms. If everything goes properly, we reach Thornhaven in 3 days. I have credentials that can get us through the palace gates. What kind? I sell silk to several noble households. He winked. One of my clients happens to be the East Wing, where Prince Morgan keeps his rescued animals. For the first time since Millbrook, Luella felt hope. You planned this carefully. I'm a merchant. Planning keeps merchants alive. Muhammad looked toward the road. Now, unless anyone wants to discuss philosophy while Millbrook's guards organize a search party, I recommend we move. Over the next hour, the refugees changed their appearance. Muhammad provided simple, respectable traveling clothes. Everyone washed away ash and dirt. Hair was combed. Faces cleaned. The transformation was startling. The secret to hiding, Muhammad explained, is looking as though you have nothing to hide. The wolves disappeared into the forest. They would parallel the road, close enough to respond, far enough to remain unseen. The Alpha King left last. Its eyes remained fixed on Luella until she nodded. I'll be fine. Only then did it vanish among the trees. When the caravan finally moved, they looked exactly like Muhammad had promised. A merchant, his employees, travelers escorting goods to Thornhaven for the winter season. You're very good at this, Luella said as they walked beside his wagon. I've had practice. Muhammad's face darkened. I've watched powerful lords destroy families who had no way to fight back. Sometimes innocent people only need someone willing to make the contest slightly less unfair. You do this regularly? Tom asked. When the fugitives are innocent and the lord is a monster. Muhammad glanced toward the hidden wolves. Though this is admittedly my first time smuggling a supposed witch and her wolf army, I am not a witch. I know. Muhammad smiled. But stories have power, Miss Martin. Underwood is telling one about you. He looked ahead. We need a better story. As they traveled, he explained the rest. In Thornhaven, they would hide inside one of his warehouses in the merchant district. After that, Muhammad would arrange a delivery to Prince Morgan's private menagerie. Luella would accompany the shipment. You'll be carrying silk, Muhammad said, and your story. The prince will believe me? No guarantee exists. Muhammad shook his head. But Prince Morgan cares deeply about animals. If he sees that these wolves follow you willingly rather than because you have enslaved them, he may listen. That night they camped far from the road. The wolves returned at dusk. They appeared one after another from darkness. The Alpha King came directly to Luella and pushed its head against her chest. She smiled and ran her fingers through its fur. I missed you too. Muhammad watched. Remarkable. They're not trained, Luella warned. I can see that. They're partners. That makes it considerably more remarkable. Muhammad removed a notebook. May I draw this? Evidence of the relationship might help with the prince. Draw whatever you like. Luella was too exhausted to object. Shelia sat beside her while Muhammad sketched. Do you trust him? She whispered. I don't know. Luella looked toward Muhammad. But the Alpha King seems to. Shelia smiled faintly. You really call him that? Look at him. Luella gestured toward the black wolf. Tell me he doesn't look like a king. Shelia studied the animal. Then her expression became thoughtful. When this is finished, if Underwood is arrested, what happens to the wolves? They go free. Luella answered immediately. Back into the deep forest. And you? Luella had no answer ready. Everything had been about reaching Thornhaven, getting justice, keeping everyone alive. She had not imagined anything beyond that. I don't know. She looked into the fire. My cabin isn't really a home anymore. You have us. Shelia gestured toward the refugees. We're your place now. She smiled. Your pack, perhaps. Luella laughed. A pack? I think it suits us. The Alpha King made a quiet sound. Luella laughed again. A real laugh. Her first in days. Perhaps Muhammad was right. Stories could become more powerful than facts. If so, Luella intended to make certain that hers, and the wolves, would finally be heard. Chapter 6. The Enemy at the Gates. Thornhaven rose from the plain like a crown carved from stone and glass. Its walls stood so high that they seemed capable of blocking the sun. Towers disappeared into low clouds. Luella had never imagined anything like it. 50,000 people live inside, Muhammad said after noticing her expression. Perhaps more. The census can hardly keep track. It's overwhelming. That is intentional. Muhammad pointed toward the walls. A capital should make ordinary people feel small. It reminds everyone where power lives. They had traveled well for 3 days. Muhammad's merchant documents had carried them through 2 checkpoints without trouble. To anyone watching, they remained exactly what they claimed to be: a trader and his workers bringing goods to wealthy customers. The wolves followed through nearby woods and fields. Each night, the pack returned. Luella spent hours speaking with the Alpha King, explaining what she hoped to do. Now the city gates stood ahead. The wolves cannot enter with us, Muhammad said. Luella had expected it. The knowledge still hurt. City guards kill predators on sight. No exceptions. Where will they stay? There's an abandoned estate east of the city. Its owner died without heirs years ago. The walls still stand. Most of the house is intact. Muhammad glanced toward the hidden pack. There's enough land for 20 wolves, and I've used it before when I needed to store sensitive goods. You truly think of everything, Tom said. Details are my profession. Their wagon joined the line entering Thornhaven. Muhammad turned toward Luella. You need to say goodbye now. After we cross the gates, there can be no contact until our meeting with Prince Morgan is arranged. Luella climbed down. She walked toward a grove beyond sight of the road. The Alpha King emerged. I have to enter the city without you. Luella knelt until her face was level with his. Only for a few days. The wolf's ears flattened. A low whine left its throat. I know. Luella pressed her forehead against his. I don't like it either. She breathed in the familiar scent of wild fur. Muhammad has somewhere safe for the pack. Food, shelter, enough space. She leaned back. I need you to trust me the way I trusted you when you pulled me out of that lake. The Alpha King stared at her. Then pressed his nose into her palm. That same gesture. I see you. I choose you. Thank you, she whispered. Muhammad approached but did not come too close. We need to move. The guards are beginning to notice us. Luella stood. Muhammad will guide you east. Follow him. The wolf huffed. It did not sound pleased, but it understood. Muhammad produced dried venison. In case they need encouragement, they'll follow. Luella hoped she sounded more certain than she felt. She returned to the wagon. As it moved toward Thornhaven, she refused to look back. But she could feel the Alpha King watching. The connection between them seemed to stretch with every yard. At the gates, black iron formed the royal crest, a lion wearing a crown of stars. Guards inspected every traveler. Papers. Muhammad handed over a thick folder. Muhammad Olson, licensed merchant, deliveries for House Cantrell, House Underwood, and a special order for Prince Morgan's menagerie, silk bedding for one of his rescued falcons. Luella stiffened at Underwood's name. The guard barely examined the paperwork. House Underwood, you say? Yes. You heard what happened at their Black Pine holdings. Terrible affair, Muhammad replied smoothly. Raiders, I heard. Worse. The guard lowered his voice. There's a witch involved, murdered dozens with dark magic. Luella kept her face still. Lord Underwood himself is here, the guard continued, meeting with the High Council. He wants a proper hunt organized. Underwood was already inside Thornhaven, already spreading his story. A witch? Muhammad performed shock perfectly. Saints protect us. Is the city safe? Safe enough. She's still somewhere in the countryside, apparently. Underwood's reward is substantial. The guard waved them through. Report anything suspicious. Naturally. The wagon entered Thornhaven. Noise swallowed them. Nobles crossed crowded streets in expensive clothing. Merchants shouted. Beggars pleaded. Children darted between wagons. Church bells rang from multiple towers. After days inside the forest, civilization felt almost violent. Underwood is already here, Luella whispered. He's poisoning everyone against us. Yes. Muhammad steered through traffic. But his attention is divided now. He expects you somewhere on the road, not entering the same city where he's meeting the council. They reached the merchant district. Warehouses and shops crowded narrow streets. Muhammad's building appeared ordinary. Inside, crates of spices, barrels of wine, and bolts of silk filled the lower floor. He led the refugees upstairs. The second level contained beds and a small kitchen. Not luxurious, Muhammad said, but safe. My employees have been instructed to ignore this floor. Sheila dropped her pack. Walls, a roof, beds. She almost laughed. I had forgotten those existed. The refugees settled in. Muhammad pulled Luella aside. I need to make my normal deliveries today. My cover matters. And the prince? Tomorrow morning I'll contact his assistant concerning the menagerie order. With luck, we'll have an appointment before evening. And without luck, we improvise. Muhammad gave her a grim smile. But first we try the lawful path. Luella nodded. We have witnesses. Yes, but Underwood has status. Muhammad opened his sketchbook. That's why we need the wolves. He showed her drawings of the Alpha King pressing against Luella, children touching wolves, and the pack resting around refugees. If Prince Morgan sees this relationship directly, Underwood's story becomes harder to believe. Because someone using witchcraft wouldn't need willing allies, Luella said. Exactly. Muhammad closed the book. We're not only disproving Underwood, we're giving the council another version of who you are. I'm not a hero. No? Muhammad studied her. You saw living creatures drowning and risked your own life to save them. He shrugged. Most people would have walked away. Then he left. Luella stood by the warehouse window. Somewhere in the city, Underwood was telling nobles that she was a monster. A week earlier, she had been nobody. A disgraced girl surviving alone beside Blackpine. Now she was preparing to accuse a powerful lord of arranging mass murder. Thinking about the wolves? Sheila asked. Everything. Luella looked over Thornhaven. It's terrifying. It is. Sheila stood beside her. But also freeing. Luella glanced over. For the first time, I'm doing something that matters, Sheila said. Not simply surviving whatever mother decides for me. Luella studied her stepsister. The expensive dresses were gone. Practical clothes had replaced them. Sheila's blonde curls had been tied into a plain braid. She looked different, stronger. You've changed. So have you. Sheila smiled. You aren't trying to disappear anymore. I was never especially good at disappearing. No. Sheila glanced at her nose. But that crooked nose helped us today. Luella frowned. How? The guards expect a terrifying witch, a monster. They saw a tired girl with a broken nose and barely noticed you. Luella touched the bump. For years, that injury had brought shame. Now it had helped save her life. I'm still sorry, Sheila said quietly. For the door. For all of it. I know. Luella turned away from the window. And you're proving you mean it. The day passed slowly. Tom watched the street for signs of pursuit. Annette organized what supplies remained. The children played quietly. After sunset, Luella slipped away. Mohammed had told her where the abandoned estate stood. Going there was dangerous. She did it anyway. She needed to see the wolves. The estate sat near Thornhaven's eastern edge, behind an old stone wall. Luella found a broken section, climbed over, and dropped into an overgrown garden. A dark house stood ahead. "It's me," she whispered. The Alpha King appeared from behind a ruined fountain. Relief struck Luella so strongly she almost laughed. The wolf crossed the garden and pressed against her hard enough to nearly knock her down. "I missed you too." She buried her face in his fur. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left. The Alpha King bumped his nose against her, silencing her. Then he turned toward the house. He looked back. Luella followed. Inside, the wolves had taken over what once must have been a ballroom. Broken windows admitted moonlight. Old marble floors reflected silver light. The pack rested in a loose circle. Something moved near the center. Luella stopped. Puppies. 3 female wolves had been pregnant. Luella had noticed changes in their bodies during the journey, but she had not expected this. 7 tiny pups, barely a week old. Some nursed. Others stumbled on uncertain legs. "Oh," Luella knelt. "They're beautiful." The Alpha King watched her. One bold pup tottered closer. It sniffed Luella's hand, then produced a tiny sound apparently intended as a growl. Luella smiled. "Hello." She stroked its soft fur. "Welcome to the world." Her voice softened. "I promise, we're trying to make it better." The Alpha King settled beside her. Luella watched mothers and pups together. These wolves were no longer simply animals she had rescued. They were generations. A future. That was why she had gone onto the lake. Justice mattered. Stopping Underwood mattered. But so did this. Life continuing because someone had refused to walk away. "Tomorrow," Luella told the Alpha King, "we go before Prince Morgan." The wolf listened. "We tell him everything, and hope he values life more than politics." Luella remained until moonrise. Then she climbed over the wall and returned to Muhammad's warehouse. The merchant was waiting. "We have an appointment." Luella stopped. "Tomorrow afternoon, Prince Morgan will receive us inside his private menagerie." "That's good." "Yes and no." Muhammad looked worried. "What happened?" "Underwood requested an audience with the High Council tomorrow morning." Luella's stomach tightened. "He claims to have evidence." "What evidence?" "Witnesses from Black Pine who will say you guided the raiders. Documents concerning your family's criminal history. Statements prepared by his lawyers." Muhammad's jaw tightened. "He intends to have you formally declared an outlaw." "What does that mean?" "Once the decree is issued, anyone can kill you without legal consequence." Luella went cold. "When?" "The council meets at dawn. They could decide before noon." "But our meeting is in the afternoon." "Exactly." Muhammad looked at her. "We need Prince Morgan to intervene quickly. If the council acts first, overturning its decision becomes much more difficult. So tomorrow decides everything." "Yes." Muhammad managed a thin smile. "No pressure." Luella laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical. "Sleep," he advised. "Tomorrow we change the story." Luella lay in a borrowed bed that night. Sleep barely came. She thought of the wolves, the pups, Black Pine, her father, and the girl with the crooked nose who had somehow become the center of a conflict she had never asked to enter. Tomorrow could determine every life connected to hers. Tomorrow, someone powerful would finally hear the truth. Chapter 7. The Prince's Menagerie. Dawn arrived both too quickly and too slowly. Luella had slept perhaps 2 hours. Her dreams were filled with broken ice, drowning wolves, and burning houses. Muhammad knocked after sunrise. "The council meets within an hour. Underwood will present his case." He looked grave. you could be legally declared an outlaw before midday. Then our case needs to be stronger. Luella's voice sounded calmer than she felt. Are we ready? As ready as anyone can be. Mohammed handed her a package. Your costume. Luella opened it. Inside was a dress. Not extravagant, not noble, but beautifully made. Deep forest green. Simple embroidery decorated the collar and cuffs. It was finer than anything Luella had worn in 6 years. I can't take this. You already have. Mohammed pointed toward the room. First impressions matter when the thing you're asking a prince to save is your life. Shelia helped her dress. She braided Luella's hair neatly, then treated the remaining cuts and bruises with salve. There. Shelia stepped back. You almost look noble. I look like someone pretending to be noble. You look like someone people may listen to, Tom said. He had changed as well. His butcher's clothing had been replaced by a respectable coat. Someone who matters. They left before noon. Thornhaven's streets were crowded. People bought goods, argued over prices, visited friends, and continued ordinary lives while Luella's future approached judgment. The palace district opened into broad avenues and formal gardens. The palace itself covered an enormous area. White stone, glass, high towers, walls 5 centuries old. Guards protected every entrance. Muhammad's papers got them through. Servants recognized him. They moved through marble halls beneath priceless tapestries. Prince Morgan's menagerie is in the eastern grounds, Muhammad explained. It's where he hides when politics becomes unbearable. He lowered his voice. He's rescued injured hawks, sick horses, even a bear cub after hunters killed its mother. He sounds kind. He's an idealist, surrounded by pragmatists. Muhammad smiled faintly. That either makes him exactly who we need or exactly the wrong person. I'm not sure yet. They entered an enclosed garden. Luella stopped in surprise. Winter seemed absent here. Flowers bloomed. Fruit hung from living trees. Birds sang among green branches. Magic, Luella whispered. Money, Muhammad corrected. Enough money to hire mages who maintain growth spells throughout winter. At the garden center stood elaborate habitats. An aviary rose 3 stories. Deer grazed in an enclosed meadow. A huge black bear rested under artificial sunlight. He's early, Muhammad murmured. A man stood beside the bear enclosure, tall, lean, dark hair tied back. His clothes were expensive but practical. When he turned, Luella saw a man perhaps 30 years old. Angular face, tired eyes. He looked younger than she expected, and older than his years at the same time. But what caught Luella most was how he looked at the bear. Not as property, not as a curiosity, with affection. Muhammad, Prince Morgan smiled. You remain punctual. Your Highness. Muhammad bowed. I brought the silk bedding you ordered. Then he gestured toward Luella. Along with a young woman accused of burning a village, murdering citizens, consorting with demons, and using dark magic. Prince Morgan looked at Luella. Yes. Her heart sank. I know. He sighed. Lord Underwood spent 3 hours this morning explaining why you should be hunted down and executed. Luella felt the floor disappear beneath her. They were too late. Then Prince Morgan continued. Which is exactly why I agreed to meet you. Luella blinked. Underwood possesses many qualities. Subtlety is not among them. The prince's mouth tightened. When a man spends 3 hours insisting another person is pure evil, I tend to wonder what he desperately wants everyone to stop examining. Hope returned. Your Highness. Luella attempted the curtsy Shelia had taught her. Thank you for allowing us to speak. Do not thank me yet. Prince Morgan gestured toward a bench. Sit. He took a seat opposite her. Tell me what happened. So Luella did. She began with Black Pine Lake. The trapped wolves. Underwood's plan to drown them. Her decision to intervene. The confrontation on the ice. The raiders. Black Pine burning. Their confession that Underwood had hired them. The refugees. The Thornwood. Millbrook. The wanted posters. Their journey to Thornhaven. Prince Morgan interrupted nothing. When Luella finished, silence remained for several moments. Remarkable, he said at last. But it is still a story. Luella's heart tightened again. Underwood has one as well. He has witnesses willing to claim you assisted the raiders. He has records describing your family's criminal history. Prince Morgan folded his hands. He has constructed a persuasive image of a bitter young woman seeking revenge. It's false. I know. Luella stopped. The prince's interruption had been quiet but certain. I know Underwood has lied. Then why? Sheila stopped herself. Prince Morgan answered anyway. Because knowing something and proving it are very different. He looked toward the animals. I am the king's youngest son and fourth in line for the throne. I possess influence, but not unlimited authority. He sighed. Underwood is a powerful lord. Challenging him directly requires proof that even the High Council cannot dismiss. We have witnesses, Tom said. Survivors. Commoners. Prince Morgan looked apologetic. Underwood will say they hate him, that they are protecting Miss Martin. The council will weigh a lord's word more heavily. He stood. We need something he cannot explain. Luella understood. The wolves. Prince Morgan turned. For the first time, his weariness disappeared beneath genuine interest. Yes. He approached Luella. Muhammad's letters described something unusual. He says the wolves follow you voluntarily. They do. You do not control them? No. Luella shook her head. They saved my life several times. Why? Because. Luella searched for the same word she had used in the Thornwood. We recognize each other. Prince Morgan watched her carefully. I understand what they are, and somehow they understand me. Can you prove that? His intensity surprised her. Can you show it so clearly that no one in the council can deny what they are seeing? Yes. Luella answered before fear could stop her. But the wolves are outside the city. Then bring them here. Muhammad shifted. Your Highness, 20 wolves inside palace grounds may concern people. Let them be concerned. Prince Morgan's smile sharpened. I'll call an emergency session of the High Council tonight. Muhammad stared. Tonight? Every lord and councillor who listened to Underwood this morning will return. Morgan looked toward Luella. And they will witness Miss Martin's wolves themselves. Luella swallowed. And if it goes wrong? Prince Morgan waited. If the crowd frightens them, if a guard panics, if one wolf attacks. She did not need to finish. Then Underwood wins, the prince said. And we all look like fools immediately before something much worse happens. His expression softened. But I don't believe that will happen. Why? Muhammad's sketches. He nodded toward the merchant. And your story. Then he looked around the menagerie. I've spent most of my life learning to understand creatures that cannot argue their own cases in court. A faint smile touched his face. I generally trust animals more than politicians. Preparations began immediately. Prince Morgan sent mandatory summonses throughout Thornhaven. Every member of the High Council was ordered to attend. Muhammad sent trusted servants for the wolves. Guards took positions around the menagerie. Prince Morgan insisted they were there only to control panic, not threaten the pack. We're actually doing this, Sheila murmured. Servants were arranging viewing areas for the council. We're bringing 20 wolves in front of the most powerful people in the kingdom. We're showing them the truth, Luella said. Her hands were damp. Everything depended on the wolves, especially the Alpha King. If he appeared controlled, Underwood would call it witchcraft. If he appeared violent, Underwood would call it proof. If he ignored Luella completely, her entire claim of partnership might collapse. The sun was descending when Muhammad returned. They're here. Luella's heart jumped. We brought them through service entrances. Muhammad looked toward Prince Morgan. Your Highness, there is something else. 3 females recently gave birth. Prince Morgan's eyes widened. Pups? 7. Less than 2 weeks old. Bring them. Muhammad hesitated. The pups too? Especially the pups. Morgan looked at Luella. No mother allows someone she fears to handle her young. If these wolves permit Miss Martin near their pups, that demonstrates trust in a way words cannot. Council members began arriving at dusk. Lord Philip Underwood came early. The moment he saw Luella beside Prince Morgan, his face darkened. This is outrageous. He crossed the garden. Your Highness, that woman is a criminal. She belongs in chains, not beside you like an honored guest. She is beside me because I invited her. Prince Morgan's voice remained polite. Steel lay beneath it. The same reason you are here. Underwood stopped. We settle this tonight. More nobles entered. Some were familiar, others Luella had never seen. They studied her with curiosity, disgust, fear, or amusement. Then the High Counselor arrived. Nicholas Duran was elderly, thin, and precise in every movement. The conversation stopped. Your Highness, Duran said. Your summons mentioned false accusations and the nature of animal cognition. His eyes moved toward Luella. I admit, I am curious. Then let us satisfy that curiosity. Prince Morgan addressed the council. Lord Underwood claims Miss Martin uses dark magic to enslave wolves and commit murder. Miss Martin claims the animals follow her voluntarily because they regard her as an ally. Morgan nodded toward Muhammad. Tonight, we observe. The gates to the staging area opened. Wolves entered, one after another. 20 shapes moved into the menagerie. The garden changed instantly. A space built and controlled by human beings suddenly felt ancient, wild. Several nobles stepped backward. 2 women screamed. The Alpha King entered last. 3 females followed, carrying pups gently in their mouths. Every wolf looked toward Luella. Prince Morgan spoke quietly. Miss Martin. Luella swallowed. Show us. She stepped forward. Her legs felt weak. Behind her came whispers. Weapons shifted. Underwood muttered angrily. Luella stopped 10 feet from the Alpha King. The black wolf watched her. Hello, she whispered. She kept her voice calm. I'm sorry I brought you here. The Alpha King tilted his head. I'm sorry I have to ask this. Luella glanced toward the council. But they need to understand what you are. She returned her gaze to him. What we are. The wolf considered her, then walked forward. He closed the distance, and gently pressed his forehead against Luella's. Several people gasped. That's impossible, someone whispered. Wild wolves don't. They aren't controlled animals, Luella said. Her hand settled against the Alpha King's neck. They're free. She turned slightly toward the council. There's a difference. Luella knelt. The Alpha King lowered himself beside her. If I controlled them, they would have no choice. She looked around. They would be slaves. The 3 mothers approached. One carried a pup to Luella. The wolf placed her baby directly beside Luella's knees. Prince Morgan inhaled. Wolves do not normally permit strangers near newborn young. No, Luella said. Not unless they trust them. She lifted the pup gently. It squirmed, made tiny sounds, showed no fear. This is not control. Luella looked down at the pup. This is family. The council had become completely silent. Underwood's face darkened with rage. This proves nothing. He stepped forward. She bewitched them. Obviously. Some spell. Lord Underwood. Counselor Duran's voice cut through him. The old man looked at Luella. I would like to attempt something. Luella nodded. Duran approached the Alpha King. The wolf's hackles rose slightly. Luella rested a hand on his head. I mean no harm, Duran said to the wolf. Then he extended his hand, palm upward, just as Luella had done above freezing water. The Alpha King smelled him, studied him. then placed his nose against the counselor's palm. Duran went still. Extraordinary. He looked at Prince Morgan. In 40 years of governance, I have never... His eyes returned to Luella. How? I saved their lives. Luella kept the answer simple. And they saved mine. She touched the Alpha King. Everything else grew from that. A convenient story, Underwood snapped. It changes nothing. She helped raiders burn Black Pine. The raiders you hired, Shelia said. She stepped forward. The men who admitted you ordered them to destroy Francisco Cantrell's tax records. Underwood went pale. You have no proof. 17 survivors will testify, Tom added. And your estate was the only major property left untouched. Circumstantial. Underwood turned to the council. They are all lying, every one of them. Perhaps, Councillor Duran said. Underwood looked hopeful. Then Duran continued. But Miss Martin's wolves are not. Silence. They cannot manufacture testimony. The old councillor faced the other nobles. The behavior we have observed contradicts Lord Underwood's claims. He indicated the pack. Creatures forced into magical obedience would be slaves. These animals are alert, responsive, independent, and clearly capable of making choices. Prince Morgan stepped forward. There is something else. He looked at Underwood. You told the council Miss Martin was a murderous witch responsible for dozens of deaths. Underwood said nothing. Yet she has traveled for days with refugees, children, merchants, and 20 wolves. Morgan spread his hands. Where are the additional bodies? Murmurs spread through the nobles. Luella saw suspicion moving away from her, toward Underwood. Councillor Duran raised his voice. I move that every charge against Luella Martin be dismissed, pending a complete investigation of Lord Underwood's actions concerning Black Pine. Seconded, another council member said. All in favor? Hands rose across the garden. Opposed? Only Underwood raised his hand. The motion passes. Councillor Duran faced him. Lord Underwood, you will surrender every financial record connected to Black Pine for immediate audit. You will remain in Thornhaven until that audit is completed. Underwood stared. Any attempt to flee will be treated as an admission of guilt. His mouth opened, closed. For a moment he looked like a fish drowning in air. Then his hand dropped toward his sword. If none of you will listen to reason, his voice shook. Then I settle this the old way. Steel began leaving its sheath, trial by combat. I challenge Miss Martin to... The Alpha King snarled. The sound was not a warning, it was a promise. Something ancient lived inside it. Predator instinct, pack law, a form of justice older than Underwood's titles. Underwood froze. His sword remained half drawn, then he stumbled backward. On second thought, his face had lost all color. I accept the council's judgment. A wise decision, Prince Morgan said. Guards escorted Underwood away. Around them, nobles began talking at once. The story would fill Thornhaven for months. Luella barely heard any of it. The wolves surrounded her. The mothers reclaimed their pups. The Alpha King stood beside Luella, warm and solid. Miss Martin. Prince Morgan approached. This time, his smile carried genuine respect. You have accomplished something I thought impossible. Luella looked at him. What? You convinced the High Council to support a commoner against a powerful lord. I told the truth. Luella glanced at the pack. They did the rest. The wolves. Morgan studied them with open wonder. What will you do now? Luella had not considered the question. You're free. The charges are gone. Prince Morgan gestured toward the menagerie. You could remain here, work with me, help me understand these creatures. No. The answer came gently but immediately. Thank you, Your Highness, but that isn't what they need. She looked at the Alpha King. Or what I need. Then what do you need? The forest. Luella smiled faintly. Somewhere far from lords and politics. Somewhere people don't see animals as possessions. Prince Morgan nodded. I understand. He looked toward the pack. Perhaps that's best. The world may not yet be ready for what you proved tonight. Muhammad approached with Shelia and the refugees. And everyone else? Luella looked at them. Shelia, once the girl who had broken her nose, now standing as a friend. Tom, who had thrown a cleaver at a guard to give her 1 second to escape. Mothers who had trusted Luella with their children. People who believed in her when no one else had. That's their choice. Luella faced them. Anyone who wants to come into the forest can come. Anyone who wants to return to Blackpine should return. She looked at Prince Morgan. I assume Reconstruction will need help. It already has it, the prince said. I authorized funds and independent oversight. Annette sighed. Blackpine will rise again. Then she looked down. But it won't ever be what it was. Then we build something different, Tom said. Something better. Shelia stepped forward. I'm going with you. Luella blinked. Into the forest? With you and the wolves. Shelia, you aren't exactly a forest person? Shelia smiled. I know. She glanced at Thornhaven. But I don't think I'm a city person anymore either. Her expression softened. I don't know what I am. I'd like to discover it with you, if you'll let me. Luella studied her. Not the girl who had broken her nose. The woman who had crossed burning villages and frozen forests beside her. Someone who had changed. I'd like that. One by one, everyone chose. Some returned to Blackpine to rebuild under Prince Morgan's protection. Tom and Brooke chose the forest. 2 families joined them. As moonlight settled across the capital, Luella's new family prepared to leave. The wolves seemed restless to return to wild land. One final thing. Prince Morgan gave Luella a leather pouch. Supplies. She felt the weight. Money? A royal gift. We can't accept this. You saved 20 wolves. Morgan raised an eyebrow. You exposed corruption and forced my council to confront a truth it would rather have ignored. He pushed the pouch into her hands. I think you earned it. Luella opened it. Enough gold to feed her people for a year. Thank you, Your Highness. No. Prince Morgan looked toward the wolves. Thank you. He smiled. You reminded me why I began rescuing animals. His voice softened. Sometimes kindness is the only thing that allows us to survive a cruel world. They left Thornhaven shortly before midnight. Quietly. The wolves spread around them. The Alpha King returned to his place beside Luella. Behind them, thousands of lights covered the capital. Beautiful. Terrible. Filled with people who might never fully understand what had occurred in Prince Morgan's garden. Ahead waited the forest. Land where noble titles meant little. Luella had pulled 20 wolves from freezing water. The last had been the Alpha King. And now they were finally free. Chapter 8. The Pack's Home. Spring entered the Thornwood like a promise spoken softly. 3 months had passed since Luella led her unusual family out of Thornhaven. 3 months spent learning how to live for something other than surviving cruelty. They had built a settlement deep inside the forest, far from the authority of lords, far from taxes and estates. 7 cabins stood in a loose circle around a shared fire pit. The buildings were simple, temporary, but they belonged to the people who lived inside them. Luella stood at the edge of the clearing one morning. Sunlight passed through branches covered in new growth. Behind her came familiar sounds. Tom sharpening tools. Brooke hanging clothes to dry. Children laughing with wolf pups that had become stronger and bolder. The Alpha King approached quietly. As always. He leaned against Luella. Their morning ritual. I see you. I choose you. Good morning. Luella ran her fingers through his coat. With regular food and safety, the black fur had become thick and healthy. Sleep well? The wolf huffed. Luella had learned to interpret that sound as amusement. Lou, Shelia called from a cabin. One of the traps caught something. Help me dress it. Coming. Luella crossed the clearing. The Alpha King followed. Shelia waited with a large rabbit. The forest had transformed her. Her hands were calloused. Freckles-covered skin once protected from every trace of weather. She moved with an ease she had never possessed in Black Pine. "You're becoming good at this," Luella said. "I had an excellent teacher." Shelia began dressing the rabbit with efficient movements. "I never expected Mother's etiquette training to become useful," Luella laughed. What could etiquette possibly have to do with rabbits? Precision. Shelia smiled. Apparently arranging flowers and dressing rabbits both reward steady hands. Laughter still surprised Luella. It came easily now. The weight she had carried for 6 years had faded. Shame, anger, constant vigilance, the belief that every person approaching her intended cruelty. The forest had slowly loosened all of it. "Muhammad sent a message yesterday," Shelia said. Luella's hands stopped. "About Underwood? His trial is next week." Shelia continued working. "The evidence is overwhelming. Financial records prove years of embezzlement." She looked at Luella. "The raiders testified too. They turned against him once they realized he had no intention of paying them. And his servants? Some came forward." Shelia's voice hardened. "He's going to hang." Luella waited for satisfaction to become joy. It did not. No triumphant rush. No desire to celebrate his death. Only a quiet certainty that justice, however late, had finally reached him. "Good," she said. "Muhammad also says Prince Morgan asks about us." Shelia smiled. "He wants to know whether we need anything. Tell him we're fine." Luella looked across the clearing. "Better than fine." Her voice softened. "Tell him we're home." The morning continued according to their new routine. Traps checked, garden tended, food prepared, cabins repaired. The wolves hunted across the surrounding forest. Every evening they returned. 6 months earlier, Luella would have called this impossible. Humans and wolves living near one another. Not master and animal. Not hunter and prey. Not enemy and enemy. Neighbors. Allies. A community based on choice. Near midday, a scout wolf appeared. Luella had learned enough wolf behavior to understand the message. "Visitors." Tom looked up. "Who?" "Humans coming from the south." "Danger?" Luella watched the scout. "I don't think so." She addressed everyone. "Stay alert. No weapons unless I signal." The wolves spread around the clearing. Luella waited near the entrance with the Alpha King beside her. 3 figures emerged between the trees. Thin. Exhausted. Packs carried nearly everything they owned. A man. A woman. A boy perhaps 12 years old. The man stopped when he saw the wolves. He stepped protectively in front of his family. "It's all right," Luella called. "They won't hurt you unless you arrive intending harm." "We heard stories," the woman said. Her voice trembled. "About a settlement deep in the forest." She looked around. People living with wolves. No lord, no taxes. She swallowed. No cruelty. "We thought it was a fairy tale," the man admitted. "But we had nowhere else." He glanced at his wife. "Lord Canrell raised our taxes again. We couldn't pay." "They took your farm," Luella said. The man nodded. "They said we could remain as tenants." "But tenants are slaves with a different title," Luella finished. The couple stared at her. She had heard the same story repeatedly from newcomers. People fleeing systems that resembled the one that had destroyed her father. "You're welcome." Luella stepped aside. "We don't have much, but whatever we have, we share." Relief changed their faces. The boy could not stop staring at the wolves. Are they really safe? As safe as anything truly wild can be. Luella crouched slightly. "They aren't pets." She pointed toward the pack. "They aren't tame." The boy listened. "But they chose to live beside us. They chose to protect us." Luella smiled. "Respect them, and they'll respect you." One female wolf approached. the same mother who had once placed her pup in front of Luella during the council demonstration. She walked slowly toward the boy. His father stiffened. Luella remained calm. The wolf sniffed the boy's hand, then pressed her head gently into his palm. The boy's face filled with delight. "See?" Luella smiled. "She approves." By evening, the family had become part of the settlement. Tom showed the father how to begin a shelter. Annette gave them hot soup. Children played together in new grass. Young wolves tumbled among them. Human and wolf laughter mixed into something that seemed completely natural now. Luella sat beside the fire. She looked at what had grown around her, and felt peace. Not a life without problems. There were still hungry days. Arguments, fear, uncertainty, hard work. But beneath those things was safety, belonging, the knowledge that tomorrow would not automatically bring new cruelty from someone with enough power to call it legal. "You're thinking very loudly." Sheila sat beside her and handed over a cup of herbal tea. "Just remembering." Luella accepted it. 6 months ago, I was nobody. She smiled faintly. A poacher's daughter in a broken cabin, stale bread and stubbornness. And now you founded a refuge. Sheila took a sip. A place where people escaping tyrants can start again. She looked toward the wolves. "And, unless historical records are missing something important, you may be the first person anyone knows of to form a functioning alliance with wild wolves." Luella shook her head. "I never planned any of it." "No." Sheila became serious. "You saw wolves drowning, and you helped because it was right. So? That is the point." Sheila looked directly at her. "Most people would have walked away." Luella said nothing. "Because you didn't. 17 people survived Black Pine," Sheila continued. 20 wolves lived long enough to raise pups. She gestured around the clearing. "And people who had nowhere else now have somewhere." The Alpha King entered the clearing after his evening patrol. 3 younger wolves followed. 3 months of freedom had made him even more powerful. Healthy, well-fed, rested, living inside forests that belonged to no lord. He walked straight to Luella. A dead deer lay across his jaws. The Alpha King placed it at her feet. "For everyone?" Luella smiled. "For the pack." She stroked his head. "Thank you." Amber eyes reflected the flames. Then the Alpha King did something new. He lifted his head and howled. 1 wolf answered. Then another. Then the rest. 20 voices became more as the growing pups added uncertain notes. The sound rose across the trees, a harmony older than roads or kingdoms. The newly arrived boy stared. "What are they saying?" Luella listened. The howl entered her chest. She understood. "They're saying we're home." Her eyes filled. "This is home." She looked around the clearing. "This is pack." The wolves continued. Then a child tried to join them. A high, awkward human howl. Another child laughed and did the same. Tom added his rough voice. Brooke joined. Sheila's note was badly off-key. Luella laughed through tears. Soon every human voice rose with the wolves. It should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, it felt right. Not imitation. Declaration. We are pack. We are family. We choose this. We choose one another. When the howling ended, only the fire remained loud. Luella realized tears were running down her face. Not sadness. Something larger. Gratitude. Relief. Perhaps simply the fact that she had survived everything designed to break her. "Your father would be proud," Sheila said. Luella wiped her eyes. "I think he would." She looked into the surrounding woods. "He always said the forest gave you what you needed." The Alpha King came closer. "I thought he meant food and shelter." She leaned against the wolf. "Maybe he meant purpose, community, freedom." Luella buried her face in black fur. "Thank you." The wolf remained still. For trusting me. She closed her eyes. For teaching me what belonging to something larger feels like. The Alpha King huffed softly. Perhaps it meant, you're welcome. Perhaps it meant, foolish human, you taught us the same lesson. Probably both. More refugees arrived over the following weeks. Stories of the settlement spread through quiet networks used by people escaping oppression. Not everyone was accepted. Those who wanted only to avoid effort were sent elsewhere. Those willing to work toward something better were welcomed. 7 cabins became 20, then 30. Someone began calling the settlement Wolf Haven. Eventually no one remembered who had invented the name. Muhammad visited in early summer. He brought news. Underwood had been executed for his crimes. His property had been seized. His wealth had been divided among Black Pine's survivors. Prince Morgan personally supervised Black Pine's reconstruction and created safeguards to prevent one lord from ever gaining such complete power there again. The prince sends his regards, Muhammad said while sharing tea beside Wolf Haven's fire. He also asked me to bring you something. Muhammad produced a carved wooden box decorated with wolves and trees. Inside lay a handwritten letter. Luella unfolded it. Dear Miss Martin, I hope this letter reaches you safely and finds your forest home thriving. Stories about Wolf Haven have reached Thornhaven. People speak of a place where humans and wolves share the forest, where refugees find protection, and where an entirely different kind of community is taking shape. You should know that your actions have created consequences far beyond anything you may have intended. 3 other lords have been investigated for crimes resembling Underwood's. 2 have already been convicted. The High Council has introduced new oversight for taxation and land management. You pulled 20 wolves from freezing water. In doing so, you helped pull an entire kingdom closer to justice. If Wolf Haven ever requires resources, protection, or simply a friend who understands what you have accomplished, remember that you have one inside the palace. With respect and admiration, Prince Morgan. Luella read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and returned it to the wooden box. He's a good man. He is, Muhammad agreed, unusually so for a noble. Perhaps others will follow him. Perhaps. Luella watched the wolf pups playing nearby. They were almost grown, strong, wild, free. Or perhaps some things will always be difficult to change. She smiled. But at least here, we know another way is possible. Muhammad stayed 3 days. He traded goods, shared news, and carried letters from Wolf Haven residents back toward relatives across the kingdom. The messages never revealed the settlement's exact location. They simply told worried families that missing sons, daughters, parents, or siblings were alive. Summer deepened. The garden flourished. Hunting was good. Children became stronger. Wolf pups learned beside their parents. And Luella Martin, once the plain girl with the crooked nose living on stale bread, found herself guiding a community. Not because she was noble. Not because she was beautiful. Not because she had inherited power. Because one winter day she saw living creatures drowning and refused to walk away. On the first anniversary of the rescue, Luella returned to Black Pine Lake. The water looked completely different in summer. Calm, bright, reflecting clouds and trees. No broken ice, no desperate wolves. The Alpha King stood beside her. A year together had deepened their understanding. Words were rarely necessary. Do you remember? Luella looked across the water. How cold it was. The Alpha King leaned closer. How impossible everything seemed. He pressed his forehead against hers. Their private language. Recognition. Choice. I was nobody, Luella whispered. And you were only another wolf. She smiled. But we saw each other. Behind them, sounds drifted through the trees from Wolf Haven. Children. Conversation. Axes. Laughter. The ordinary music of people building lives they had chosen. Beauty doesn't matter, Luella said. Her father's words returned. It's what's inside that counts. The Alpha King huffed. Agreement. Amusement. Understanding. Perhaps all three. He was right. Luella looked down at her reflection. The crooked nose remained. The plain face. Skin weathered by forest life. For the first time, she did not search the reflection for beauty. She saw something better. Strength. Kindness. The face of someone who had been surrounded by cruelty and refused to become cruel. Let's go home. Woman and wolf turned away from the lake. Together they entered the forest, back toward the settlement where two species had learned to live beside one another, back toward the family born from broken ice, desperate decisions, and one simple refusal to ignore suffering. Sunlight passed through the trees in golden shafts. The forest moved with life. And Luella Martin, once ignored, unwanted, and alone, walked forward with her pack beside her. Always with her pack.